Hey guys, welcome back to a new video. Today I will show you how to use Minecraft replay mods functions and all of the essentials, and after that I will show you some other parts that you may want to see as well. So we will start on the home screen as you should, and after you've installed the replay mod, I've done a tutorial on that. You will see an eye on the top right now. The link will also be in the description, or just look at my last video. Okay, so if you've installed the mod, you will see this button. This is the replay viewer. In here, all your replays will be saved. You can edit them in here a bit, and all of this. Now let's click it, because it is, as all of these, a button. Now I've done a tutorial world recording where I will show some of the controls on later in the video. So, as you can see, there are a few stats and I will quickly explain them. Pretty simple. This is the name you gave the video. This is the world you've made it on, or the server. This is the date and time, and this is the video length. Pretty simple. As the world loader, if you go on single player or the server loader, you can select the recording. You'll get a little white bar here, and you will then have the ability to use all of these buttons. The load button simply loads you in the recording. We will do that in just a second. You can also rename the recording. I won't do that though. You can delete the recording, and as for a Minecraft world delete, it will be gone forever. I think that's obvious. You can also do a rough split and maybe delete some stuff if you don't need it. But I will keep it as it is, because I will need to use it for the explaining later. You can also cancel out, and you will be back on the home screen. And as you can see in the top right, there is a little settings button. If you click this, you will have these settings. I'll try to explain most of them, but I don't exactly know what two of them mean. So enable notifications is simply the program will tell you in the chat when you start recording, pause a recording, restart a recording, or delete a recording, or if you do an event mark. I'll explain all of that later. You can set it to record on servers and on single player. I would suggest to keep them on, because you never know when you need the mod. There's also a recording indicator. This will just, in the top left, show an image that tells you that you're currently recording. I suggest to keep that on, because at least I sometimes do forget if I'm currently recording or not, so it's always good to have a little indicator for that. You also have a automatic recording. I tend to keep that off, because as soon as you load in a world or a server, if you have this turned on, it will start recording. Now, my PC isn't high-end, so if you have a low-end PC as well, I suggest to turn this off, because that may lag a bit. So you can also just turn the recording on by yourself, so that's why I tend to keep it off. You can rename the dialog. I do not exactly know what that means, so I will need to jump that button. Show chat is pretty simple. This makes it so in your recording, if it is turned on, you can see the chat. Now, if you use the mod for a time lapse on a server, I suggest to keep it off, because it will just be annoying and in the way. You can change the camera a bit. You can keep it to the classic replay mode camera, or you can make it a bit more vanilla-ish, so it looks more like Minecraft, but I keep it on the classic because it's just way simpler. You can activate or deactivate the path preview. I suggest to keep that on as well, because it will give you some information about your video that will come out later. I will explain that in the recording. Now, full brightness, I do not exactly know what that means, but you can set it to gamma, night vision, or both. I guess that that just means what type of full brightness you get in the recording. I have it on gamma because it's just way easier for me to load in that. And you can also change the interpolar. This basically means on how you will move over the recording path. I will explain that in the clip right after that, because it's simpler to explain it on an actual path. Now, if you're done with all of your settings and you're happy with them, you can just click done and cancel and go out. Now that we're back on the main screen, there are two more buttons that I will show before we go in the recording. If you go into single player or multiplayer, after you've installed the mod, you will have this little button up here, where you can set it to record or not record single player. If you have it axed on, you will have the ability to start, pause and stop a recording whilst you're in a world. If you have it turned off, these buttons will not appear, so you cannot start the recording. Same with multiplayer, there will be a little check mark up here. If you have it checked, you can turn it on and off. If you don't, you don't. When you've joined a single player world, for example, now if you press escape, there are two new buttons. There's the resume recording and the start recording. This one doesn't make sense right now, but I'll just show it. You can start recording, and now it will tell me in chat that the recording has started and that I'm recording, as you can see up on the top left. You can walk around, do whatever you wanna, it's all good, and yeah, really cool. And now the resume recording has changed to pause recording, because you can pause, as it can tell up here, and you can resume the recording again. Or if you're finished with the recording, you can also stop the recording. Now, if you exit out of the world or the server, you will get this window. It will just tell you the name and the file tag, what it is. Now, you can either left click on it and delete everything out by hand. I do not suggest to do that. I suggest just to click the delete button. Now it will be in red, delete. If you now click done, the video file will not be saved. But now I can just type in the name, left click it and say hi. If I now click done, it will be saved in the replay view, as you can see here. Okay, so let's hop in the recording and I will explain all of the rest. So we just select it and click load. Now, if you load into the recording will instantly play. This is just so you can be quicker on the move here, and yeah, as you can see, I can move my camera, and the controls are like if you're in spectator mode. So you use WASD to move around. It is always depending on where you look. So if I look like this, I will fly in this direction if I press W. And if I look down on myself and fly down with W, it will move to me. So the controls are laid on where you look, not the actual XYZ coordinates. Okay, the first button I will show you is P, because P pauses the recording. I suggest as soon as you load into a recording to instantly press P, because it just makes it easier for you to find where you're at, because there's a slight issue with the mod, because sometimes you may load into a recording and you will basically, let's see how far I need to fly, you will basically see this. Nothing. Now, don't get worried, I have a tip for you. If you start a recording, write down the coordinates you started recording on, because you can still press F3 to get your coordinates open. Now, I know that I need to go more north, because that is my starting coordinates. So I'll fly in the direction of north, and hey, we are in the loaded chunks. Since the mod doesn't load the whole world, just the loaded chunks by your character. You may sometimes spawn outside, that is no problem, it happened to me as well. But yeah, just so you know, maybe write down the coordinates. Now I can see I'm back there, so I can also just fly over. A little info: if you need to fly a greater distance, you can use the scroll wheel on your mouse to speed up or slow down the speed you're flying at. So if you maybe want to do some detailed move like fly through that hole down there, of course being full speed is not going to be exact movement. So I can scroll down and I have better controls over where I'm going to fly, so now I can fly through the hole. And as in spectator mode, you do not have collision. So yes, you can look through blocks. Bit weird, but I think you can manage it. Now, as you can see, you have some stuff up and down on your screen. I will now explain them. If you want to release your cursor, because normally your mouse will control your view, you can press T or whatever your button is to open the chat. You will then gain your cursor back. You will gain control over your cursor. There we go. Now, I'll explain all of these buttons quickly. This up here is the timeline for the recording, for the raw recording. So whatever your time is on here is your time in the actual recording. If you can remember, my recording is exactly 27 minutes and 14 seconds long, as so is the timeline. Now we have a speed controller, so if I now start the recording again, you can speed it up so you're quicker, or I can slow it down so you're very slow. This here is the replay controls, so if I click here, it will also pause the recording, and you can also unpause it again. Now, I will quickly put my speed up to 1 again, so it doesn't look as weird. Of course, you can also, as said, use the keybind, which, as you can see, is P. Down here is a second timeline. This timeline is for your end result. So it is relative to this timeline up here. As you can see, my marker is not at the full 0. That will give a little issue in just a second, and I will explain how to fix it. Oops. Made the error there by accident. Okay, so there are these two green buttons, a time keyframe and a position keyframe. The time keyframes don't need to be used all the time. They just need to be at the start of your recording and at the end of your recording. The position keyframe is a bit more interesting for people who use the mod because it allows you to control where the position of the camera will be. Now, as you can see, I'm not at 0, 0. So if I now place a position keyframe, it will tell me, hey, you just placed your first keyframe and it's not at 0, 0 for the recording. That can give an issue. Doesn't have to be, but it can freeze until you are at the first keyframe. So you can also back out of it. You can either press I again to delete it, or if you maybe moved on and you cannot get on the exact position again, you can just left click it and press delete on your keyboard. Now you can control both timelines by just clicking on them. It will just control where your recording jumps to. And same down here. You can also click and drag, which will be better if you need to go to a perfect time, but you can also do it like this and just click to the position. It's up to you. I can also speed up here, but up here you can't really drag it because that either could lag or it doesn't function with some PCs. So here you just need to find the time where you want to go and just left click. Going forward is no problem. I can go forwards with no lag. But going backwards is a problem because it needs to unload all of the blocks, all of the particles. So let's go back and I will quickly cut until my game has loaded. Okay, we are back at 0, 0, but now there's something weird going on. As you can see, there are a ton load of particles. These particles are of all the blocks that I've broken whilst building. So my tip is for you, if you're recording, keep 10 seconds at least before you start your actual build or whatever you want to do in the recording, and keep 10 seconds at the end as well. Just because also, as you can see, my character will probably snap their head. Yep. This is because for some PCs the recording may lag a bit or it doesn't really work in like the first seconds and all of the particles need to disappear. So you have a clean slate, I suggest keep 10 to 20 seconds space before you start. The thing is, if I now would load and start my recording exactly at 0, 0, it would also render the whole particles stuff, so that isn't too great. That's why I suggest to keep some space so they can get deleted before you start your recording. And then you have these two buttons. You can play your camera path from the cursor position, this position, but I don't have a path, so it cannot play anything because I need 2 position and 2 time keyframes. And you can also render, but the same thing, it needs 2 position and 2 time keyframes. Now, let's do the first part of the recording. But as you can see again, well, my time keyframe is again not at 0, 0, so what do? We pick the slider and pull it back. Or there is a second way. If you press V on your keyboard, it will push it back to 0, 0. So if I press V, it will plop it back. There's a second way to do this. Down here on the triple slides, you can click it. And here are all of the buttons that you can use. There are multiple buttons, and one very interesting button is M. Because whilst you're still recording, maybe doing a time lapse, and something happens, you die or you find something very cool, and you want yourself to remember that, you can, during a recording, press M. The chat will tell you that you just placed an event marker, and in your final recording there will also be an event marker, so you can find the spot easier. You can also capture a thumbnail. The thumbnail will not be for your video, the thumbnail will be for the recording. Because if you look here, as you can see, the recording in the normal categories will not have an image. It will have the icon of the replay mode. If you now press N during your recording, you will capture a thumbnail for the video. So maybe you can, in the recording, skip to the end, make a thumbnail of the final thing, and you can remember what it was for. Now, you can also clear all keyframes. This should only be done if you're very sure you want to do this, because you will delete every time keyframe you've placed, and every position keyframe as well. You can open the keyframe presence, we will get to that in just a second. As we've seen already, P is to play and pause the replay, B is for the player overview. This is very good for servers, because maybe you built on a server and there's a person flying around maybe looking at your build. Now you want to do a time lapse, but that person would constantly be seen in the time lapse. If you press B, you will open this window. As you can see, the skin lags sometimes. But the cool thing is, you can make them invisible. As you can see, I just plopped out of the recording. You could still see the build being built, but not the character, which I think is really cool if you don't want other people to be seen in your recordings. So it's like green screening someone out without the green screen part. You can also plop down your position or your spectator keyframe. This is just so the camera remembers where you've looked and all of the more specific settings. There's a quick mode. I don't exactly know what it does, because for me it actually doesn't do anything. But maybe someone who knows what this does could type it down in the comments so I know. You can reset your camera tilt because you can with L roll clockwise and with J roll counterclockwise. So I will quickly do that here. Close the window. If you use J, your camera will turn. If you press K, it will reset. You can also do it in the other direction. Pressing L, you can turn. K, reset. You can synchronize your timeline with V, and as said, if I skip to a certain time after I've placed down my first position and time keyframe, and I press V, the cursor will move to the corresponding position my upper cursor here is at. So if I'm at 1 time speed in the first time and position keyframe, and now I skip to 10 minutes and press V, the little cursor down here would jump to 10 minutes. Pretty simple. You can put down the time keyframe without. You can toggle the lighting so you can have it full brightness. As you can see in the top right, there's an icon telling you that you have full brightness activated. I tend to not do that because it just gives a more Minecrafty feel, but if you maybe build like a big castle or something and you want to record on the inside, but it's very, very dark, you can just press Y and you would have full brightness and see everything. And then there is H, and H just toggles the path preview. This is basically just showing where your camera is at. And if I do that, I will quickly explain the interpolation that we've just had in the settings as well. As you can see, you can open the settings as well, right here. By the way, as you've just seen, you can either use the corresponding key, or you can also press the buttons. So if I want my camera overview, my player overview, I can either press B on my keyboard, or I can press the button here. And to get out of this window, by the way, just press escape. Most things here use escape. So if you have your cursor active, you can also just press escape and you're back moving your camera. Okay, now that we've done that, I will explain how to actually use the recording. Now, I will already know that I start my building here. If you don't know, I suggest to skip to the end of your recording, of course having paused your recording, because if you don't pause your recording and you skip to the end, it will just loop back to the start. So you can skip to the end, and now I can see, okay, my building will be here, and I can start my recording corresponding to that info. So I can also skip back now. And as said again, the particles will do a little sneak peek here, and you can just lose them by pressing P to start the recording. Now, this is me, and I want to start my recording here, because I will start building here. Now, there are two types of keyframes. There's the first version, which is this simple one right outside here. It's colored in a greenish color, who would have guessed? And the if used button is red. So, if we now were to delete this one and actually go over to my character, it can be any player, any entity, so it can also be animals. Or the weather if you want to, I don't know, every entity. As said, because this is spectator, you can left or right click on any entity and you will turn into that entity. The spectator keyframe will now appear, which is bluish colored and if used, purplish colored. Now because this is my first position, I put down a time keyframe, and now let's skip to 1 minute, 2 minutes. There we go. 2 minutes according to this one as well, because it is still 1 time speed. Same thing, spectator keyframe and time keyframe. And now there's this blue line, basically telling me that all of this is in spectator mode. And as you can see, there's a very weird bluish line, because this bluish line tells me where the camera will be moving. So if I take the cursor and move it about on this line, as you can see, the camera will perfectly follow the line. So if I were to skip in any part of this, would be in my spectator mode, placing the blocks, without hand and UI, obviously. You can turn the buttons, the timeline up here and the button down here off by pressing F1, like in normal Minecraft, and also F3 as said to open the coordinates. Pretty simple. To get out of spectator mode, you simply press Shift. So yeah, I think that's really cool. And of course you can fly out of the spectator mode at any time. So if I now skip behind this, like here, and I want the camera to be here. As you can see, the button is green because I'm not in spectator mode anymore. Can place it down and it will still be normal. So if you do this, you will just after it has finished the blue line, start on the other movement that it will need to do to get to the position. So it will just fly out of your character. Normally it will do this in a quicker move. But yeah, as you can see, the camera does move and my character flies away. So, really cool. The first thing you need to do is press I and O, because you will place down a keyframe for the position you're currently at and a keyframe for the time that you're currently at, which would correspond to around 10 seconds. So I'll press I and O. As you've seen, they just turned red. This means that at the corresponding position to my cursor on here is both already placed. You can also delete them as said by either left clicking on them and pressing the delete key, or just clicking these. As you see, there's a red line here. This basically says this time keyframe is corresponding to 5 seconds, around 5 seconds. And now there's this. This is your path preview. As said, you can toggle it with H, you can turn it off and on. I suggest to keep it on because it gives very much information about how your camera will move, with what speeds your camera will move, and where your camera will be at. So, let's start the recording and place down some position keyframes. I'll move over here, so why not do that? My camera starts here, and I push a little bit in and press I. So now there's a position keyframe, and there's this. This little line basically shows how your camera will move. This is the camera. You can move the camera on this line by dragging this cursor here. So I can see at 3 seconds my camera will be at this position looking down. And now there were the path interpolations. There's the cubic interpolation, the linear interpolation, and another one which I don't exactly know what they do. The cubic interpolation basically smooths out the lines. So if I let it play, and I'll just let it play in A times speed because this would take hella long. I can now see I'm moving over here. So why not move the camera over here? By the way, you can also do the same thing as with the cursor. You can drag click it to a different position. So now I can tell it, okay, this position should be reached at 3 seconds, and it will be. Now I can see the camera is over here. So let's put down a position keyframe. And as you can see, the line just turned very darkish red. This means that this move will speed up the camera by quite a bit. And even if I put my next position keyframe almost exactly next to it, it will do this weird curve. Now, using the cubic interpolation, it will smooth out any movement you do. But if you use the linear interpolation, it will not smooth it out, which means it would directly move from this key to this keyframe. Now, because it built so much speed moving to this position, this move, as you can see, will do quite a swirl, because it needs to build off the speed it built up here. I will quickly show how that looks. Right, I do not have a time keyframe. There we go. Go down. Now, this quick move would look something like this. And around now it will speed up. And we'll do a weird swirl. But if you look at the positions, you would kind of guess it would move like this. But because of the build-up speed, it will need to move in this swirl. Weird, but it makes sense. And now I take a look at these, and I'm like, no, they don't seem correct. I do not like the position. What can you do? You can press C, or go down here and click here, and you can delete all keyframes. It will ask for permission again, because it may delete a heckin' load of work. Now I want to delete it, so I just press yes, because I did not like the positions. So let's redo them. I go back here, move my camera back because I obviously want to start at the start, and now it has already placed blocks. If I now were to put my first position and time keyframe here, my recording would start with me already having placed 3 blocks. Not good, because it will just look a bit weird. So let's move fully back. But I like the position I was at. So what can I do? I can just use O to delete the current time keyframe that was at the already placing 3 blocks one, and press O just again, and the time keyframe will have moved. Pretty simple. Now I will quickly place down all of the time keyframes and position keyframes I want, so I can show some more things. So see you after that. Now, I've already placed a few position keyframes, and as you can see, they all have almost the same color. This is because I use a little rhythm. I tell myself every 5 seconds I place down a position keyframe. And then some people can do that via memory or just controlling, and I move around the same speeds. As you can see, there are some weird parts where it won't seem as correct. So for example, this movement will be way slower than this movement, because these are done in 10 seconds and this same space here is also done in 10 seconds, which means that this will be way faster. But I've no problem with that. So what you need to do is you need to have a feel for the speed that your camera will move in. Now I don't want it to move that fast, so what can you do? At least I, try to be on the time keyframe or the path preview and find the space where I want to be, which would be around here. And because I'm not putting down a time keyframe, I can, even if the recording has moved this fast and already here, I can also just delete the position keyframe, because I'm just changing the position of the camera, not the time that the camera was at that point. I think that's pretty simple to understand, but maybe not everyone will understand what I just meant with that. And as you saw, the little cursor down here, from this position already jumped to here. This is because the program, of course, isn't stupid. It knows every 5 seconds he places down a time keyframe. He is already in a placed section, so he probably will not place down any time keyframes between here. So I can do the same type of control and it will do some work for me, so I just don't need to change the position, which I think is pretty cool. Okay, back to me placing the time keyframes. Now, I have done all of this movement, but now I have a problem. As you can see, I'm starting to build over there, but my camera is over here. The movement from the camera going here to here would be so fast that it would not look good. Now, what to do? Pretty simple. If you go down here to the little 3 bars again, click this. You have this right here, the keyframe presence. If you click either X or the buttons, this will open. The Keyframe Repository. And this is actually pretty simple to explain what it does. This basically makes it so you can save multiple pathways on the same recording. Good, because maybe, as you've already seen, some YouTubers have some clips of time lapses of them building stuff or something, and they jump between positions. In the normal recording you can do that, but you do not need to go out of the recording, render this part, go back, start again, render the next part. You can just click Save As, give it a name, I'll call it Test 1, click Save. So now, this camera path has been saved as Test 1. So I can go on here. Also, just like the words collector, you can click it. You can overwrite it if you have a new path. You can load it in. So if I now would delete everyone, I could still load it back in. I could still save the new path, which is now same. I can add it to the queue. I can rename it, I can copy it, I can remove it, or I could paste another one in. So, now I've positioned all of these. I have a new repository saved, and now I can delete all of these. But now I'm like, wait a second, I wanted to change something. So I can select it still, and load it in. They're still there, no problem. I can go in, change all of them, and there will be no problems. There is a second thing here though. As you can see, you cannot see the first position keyframe, the first time keyframe. This is why the timeline has moved. You can zoom in and out in the timeline to maybe get a better look, or to get further out. You have the scroll wheel down here. Now, at some point in the recording it will move on, because it doesn't have enough space anymore. But you can always scroll back and there it is. One info. If you do this like clip to clip part with multiple parts in the repository, remember to put down 2 time keyframes, because if you do not do that, it will not work. Because then your render will tell you, I don't know when to stop this recording, so I cannot render it. Because now, then it would need to render the rest in that part, and it wouldn't know when to start or stop at this part. Bit of issue, but no problem if you remember to do it. What I tend to do is just put down a time keyframe with every position keyframe I do. You can do that, but it's not necessary. Okay, so as said, I've saved this. I do not need this part anymore. I can delete it and continue. This is where I want to start. So I now need to move back again because again the keyframe is not at 0, 0. So I can just pick this up and move it back, put down time and position keyframe, and continue. A different way in which you can save it is also for the clips do different names. So the first part was for the first floor, this part down here, the stone part. The second clip now was for the second floor. So I can just rename it, also call it second floor. Pretty simple, click done and you're good. So yeah, let me do the rest now and hopefully actually do the rest. Now I want to do something called bullet time. If you don't know what it is, you've maybe seen it in some movies like Matrix. It is basically me slowing down time, moving very fast, which would normally not work. So I will play this at 1 time speed, and as said, it will move the cursor relative to my speed, but I will move it back. Now I want this camera to go through that open window down there in a very short amount of time. So I will go here, move down relative to that time up there, and put down a time keyframe. Quickly play and pause again. And now I have moved quite a bit. That doesn't make... Oh, okay. Now I haven't moved really much in the time up here, but down here I have. But now I say that time here, that like 2 seconds, is more than 5 seconds down here. So I can fly down to the window and go through it. Place down a time keyframe and a position keyframe. I'll put down a time keyframe just to make sure that I remember where this is it. So, for example, if it doesn't work, so I know where it was. Now I'm here with me. And now move here. Same thing, it says these maybe 2 seconds are like 3 to 4 seconds down here, which means it will be slowed down. I'll quickly show you how that will look. As you see, the recording was really slow, but what I don't like is this camera moves through that there. Why would it move through that if I made it an open window? That doesn't make any sense, does it? No. So what we do, find the position we were at, move almost on the time where it would have been, delete the actual one, move closer, put my own one down again. That's the wrong key. So again, move on time, right there, and place mine down. Since this was just a position, not a time, I can do it even after it actually happened and the window is already closed. So let's take a look again. Because with the mod, you need to make sure that you do not glitch through blocks, because this happens quite often because of the smoothing of your line. So if you do some recording, make sure that doesn't happen to you, because it will look a bit weird. So yeah, now I'll do the interior. Okay, I have now placed all of the position and time keyframes that I need, and this is the final project. As you can see, inside it is a bit more complex than planned, but it works. So I hope this all works, because if not, then I have a problem. And now here is the thing that you can do. I now have multiple paths here, and I want to make all of them be rendered. So you select the first one and click Add to Queue, and this window will pop up. Since the background is a bit weird, I will show it in a different place. Oops, also correct. There we go. If you have a start time and position keyframe and an end time and position keyframe, you can now click Render Camera Path. If you do that, you get this window. There are multiple infos that you can change, and I will try to explain all of the ones that I know. So, you can change the rendering method. The normal one is the default rendering, but there are multiple that have different meanings. There's the default rendering, which renders it in the specific resolution that you set, and it's very quick to render in this way. There's the stereoscopic version, which is a side-by-side 3D movie. This is the version that you can, for example, use in those cheap VR headsets where you put your phone in. That's what that would be. So there are two of the same videos. Then there's the cubic rendering, which does a 360-degree panoramic view. And that is basically light out flat pixels, which can be used by the Oculus Rift, for example, but it cannot be used by YouTube. Because if you want to do a 3D video for YouTube, you can use this one. This one works for YouTube's new projection function, and this one also works with Oculus Rift. The problem here is that you need to change some things in the saves that YouTube will look and make sense of this being a 3D video, because you need to change some things in the metadata. I'll put a guide in the description for how you can do that. I don't know how it works though, so I cannot really explain it. And then there's the ODS rendering. This renders also in a 3D and 360-degree video. This also works with YouTube, but I haven't really looked into this one. Okay, if you've done that, then there's the encoding presence. For example, MP4. Potato quality is bad. It's called like that. And there's WebM, where you can put in a custom bitrate. There's also a MP4 version for this. And then I suggest using the MKV or the WebM version, because if you render an MP4 and it crashes, the video file cannot be used. But if you use WebM or MKV, you can still kind of use it. You can also do a PNG sequence, so it's like a little thumb keynote, but I don't suggest to do it that way. You can change the video resolution, so for example a 1080p video has these settings. That is just your normal screen in which you're probably watching this video. You can change the bitrate, more bits, better quality, as much as I know. You can change the frame rate. I have it normally set to 60, I'm all good with that. You can change the output file's name right here. You can just click it and call it different down here. You can also change where it's saved. By the way, I've censored this part up here because there's my name. You can also tell it to render or not render name tags. That is maybe good if you want to use it in a server and you still want to have everyone's character but maybe not their name tags, because some people have gotten some things in their name that you maybe don't want to have in there. You can also stabilize the camera in the yaw, pitch and roll. As said, you can move your camera, as I've already shown, with J and L, and stopping the rotation with K. You can put in chroma you can also put in chroma keying. This will not change the floor though. This only applies to the sky. So if you maybe want a version of your character just flying around in nothingness that you can put in Discord and something and put it as a GIF or something, whatever, I suggest using a void world, since then everything will be greened out. You can also change the color, of course, to your liking. I don't exactly know what this means, but I'm just guessing that you can do this, and it will already do it for you being able to put it on YouTube, but I'm not so sure. You can also export a depth map and the camera path, which is really good for Blender usage, because Blender is a program where you can do 3D modeling and all of that stuff. A cool thing is, if you combine the depth map and the video with Blender, you can actually put things in the world that can't actually be put in the world. Really cool if you want to do some sneaky stuff. I'll put a video where someone has done this in the top right corner, where you can look at how this would look if you've successfully done it. If you want a tutorial for that, you can probably just Google it, because I'm not too sure how that works. You can also turn on the analyzing, do it for your feeling. Here I suggest not to change this. This is how it will save the name. I would not change anything in here, because I'm not sure if you will be able to fix it. And in here is, as said in the installation video, in here you put the FFmpeg file info. Now, you can either add it to the queue, you can render it, or you can cancel. Cancel would just bring you back to here. And a little tip for the low-end players like me. As you can see, there is nothing much going on. There is no good quality by itself, it's just a flat world with a few texture packs, if even. The cool thing is you can play in normal Minecraft with no shaders active, nothing, and can record during that. But if I now press escape, go into the options, video settings, and now say shaders, and select my shader that I want. Now, if you have finished loading in with the shaders, as you can see, the shaders can still apply to the already finished video, which is really cool. What I suggest you to do, if you have a low-end PC, and even with a high-end PC, I suggest to do it because it's just way quicker. Load into the world with no shaders, nothing. Do all of your positioning of the time and keyframes, of the position keyframes, all of that. Do that without any shaders, any resource packs active. You still know in your brain where you want to have the positions most of the time. And after you're done, then right before clicking the render button, then put on the shaders, the resource packs, whatever you want to have on it. It will obviously take longer to render, but it will still apply the rendered shader and all of that, which I think is a real cool addition. As you can see now, the shaders do apply, which I think is a really cool thing that every program should do, is to even be able to put on things that change the game after you've done the recording, if it's still in game. I think this is really cool and very good for low-end PC players. So yeah, just so you know, this does work. And of course, other things work as well. As said, every change you do in your settings still apply to the rendered version. Of course, before you've rendered it. After you've rendered it, doesn't work still. You can, for example, now I can turn on, need to find the setting for it. You can turn on capes or whatever, and it will also still apply, which I think is really cool. So yeah, Just so you know, for the low-end PC players, here you go, little tip. Since I have multiple parts, I will go here, select the first one, and say add to queue. Look through the settings, they don't change. The name, all good for me. Quickly check, yep, all good, and I'll just say add to queue. There it is. Second floor, same thing, add to queue, all settings are good. The settings don't change between the versions, except maybe the names. So yeah, no worries, I can just quickly click through all of these and it will be all good. So, I have all my parts, now I can click render all. And let's do that. It may lag, so I'll just cut to when it has stopped lagging. Okay, now it will do a pretty simple thing. This is the rendering video, not image, but like, well, the window you get when you start to render something. You can start a preview. This lags on my PC, so I'll keep that off. It also suffers fairly much on the performance, so maybe don't do that if you don't want to hurt your PC. You can see how long it has taken to render. You can see how long it approximately takes to render the rest. And down here you can see the already rendered frames and the needed rendered frames. You can pause the rendering, you can resume it, you can stop it. Now, since I have multiple things in my queue and rendering them, if this rendering has finished, lag and skip to the next one. Normally it will be flawless, but yeah, because I have OBS running as well, it might lag for me a bit. And as you may have heard, there's a little ping. Normally the ping is more clear to be heard. But yeah, so if you keep your headphones on, but don't want to look at the timer, maybe look some YouTube videos up, because your rendering time is way longer, like you can render like hours of video. You can still keep the headphones on and just hear that playing, and boom, you know it's done rendering and you can start editing the same video. So yeah, the one thing that is a bit crap is that it doesn't instantly put the videos together, but obviously the program doesn't know that I want them combined. So if you want to do one of those YouTube videos where they cut from clip to clip, you will need a video editing software. Mine is always down in the description that I use. It's free. Works maybe a bit needing to be learned on how it works. But yeah, just so you know, check down there if you want to know what I use. Okay, I'll clip to when all of it has finished rendering. Now, a cool thing that is when you do multiple pathways for the clips, in the replay viewer list, this will be here. It will tell you what things you have and that it has already been rendered. I think this is really cool because you can now just keep track of which ones have already been recorded, which ones haven't been, which one has been rendered, which one hasn't been rendered. There's one thing to point out: if you use the replay mod during the placement of the keyframes, there's a possibility that through your shaders they may lag out, so maybe you won't be able to see the path, movement, and anything like that. So you need to watch out for that. But if you have finished rendering all of the videos, you will be here. Again, you will be there where you last stopped, and then you can just escape out of it, no problemo. And now you will need to put the videos together. To get to the clips that you just rendered, it is pretty simple. You either press Windows R to open the Run command line, or you go on the Start, right click, and click the Run command. In here you type %app data %, and then press Enter. Then this folder will open with all of the games and stuff like that that you have installed. As you can see, my icon is a bit different. That's just because I changed the icon, so for you it will probably be a normal folder. So search for the .minecraft folder, double click on it, and then you will have these two folders, the replay recordings and the replay videos. The replay recordings will be the raw videos where you put down the key marks in. And in the replay videos will be the rendered versions. So if you look in here, there they are. And by the way, again, they will probably have the normal folder look. I just changed them so I know where they're at. So just look for the replay_videos folder, double click it, and there are your rendered videos. As said, and I will see you in the next video, I guess. Since I've shown you everything that I currently know over the mod, I hope this helped in some way and it wasn't too weird. Again, if you want to see how to install the replay mod, check the eye on the top right or in the description below. There will be a link to the video. Yeah, any program that I used today will be in the description as well. So for example, my video cutting program, if you want to make a video like this as well, and then obviously you will need to put the clips together. So yeah, I would say I'll show you the finished project, and yeah, see you in the next video, and goodbye.